You may recall that our annual tradition at MM+M is conducting an exit interview with our summer intern during the last week they're with us. Now, on paper, that could seem like a daunting task for someone who is junior in their career and pursuing opportunities in the workforce. Having an exit interview is one thing, but having it recorded as a team exercise and disseminated to the rest of the public is an entirely different one. Fortunately, this week's guest is more than familiar with the process because it's Lola Offenback, who is finishing out her second summer working with us. To quote Herman's Hermits, second verse, same as the first. Lola has once again exceeded our expectations with her versatility and resourcefulness as a reporter. After graduating from Moravian University, she returned to MM+M just before Cannes and helped us manage the wave of news coming out of the French Riviera. From there, she took on deeper reporting assignments exploring women's health trends, medical marketing internship programs, and allergy-focused ad campaigns. She also got to cover numerous in-person activations around New York and hosted a 2-part episode of the podcast about health brands that were advertising during the FIFA World Cup ahead of the final match. We're thrilled to have one more sit-down conversation with Lola to discuss how the 8-week internship went, what she made of her second year covering the medical marketing industry, and what comes next for her career. For our trend segment, we're talking about the proposed changes to the vaccine schedule and the illogical policy messaging coming from the Trump administration's health officials. Lola, this is like deja vu.
Mm-hmm. Back at it again. Another, and I actually went through my questions from last time and I was like, okay, I'm not going to repeat any of these, but let's just start off with the basic question. How was year 2 with MM+M?
It's fantastic. I've really enjoyed my summer. I've learned a lot. I came back, so.
That is half the battle right there. And you got some new characters here in terms of having Bella and Madden on the team. So I want to dive into all that, but just talk a little bit about the experience. Like when you first came to us, obviously there is the learning curve of not really knowing what this industry is and all that stuff. Coming back, was it more comfortable? Was it like, hey, like I've already done this before? Like what was the experience like in terms of being able to dive back into an industry you've already covered and reported on?
Yeah, I think at the end of last summer, I was really heavily debating, is this an industry that I really could see myself working in long term? And coming back this summer, being able to just dive in head first and have like the contextual knowledge to understand and do my job as well as I have been doing this summer was really helpful. And I think it kind of affirmed that like, yes, I am applying for full-time jobs in this field and I see myself staying in this field and feeling like I'm making a positive impact in journalism and B2B reporting. So I think last summer kind of set the foundation for this summer, and I feel like I had a lot more growth this summer.
Kind of want to drill down that point a little bit because I annually talk with a journalism class at SUNY New Paltz, my alma mater, and it's been interesting talking with people who are around your age or your generation because there is this idea of like trade publications, I guess people, and I get it. When I was coming out of college, we all wanted to work for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. Obviously Madden worked at Fortune and can talk about that kind of experience. But like, there is a value, I think, in being in the trades. And obviously it's been good to me at this point in my career. And I'm curious about maybe what you've learned in terms of your own reporting journey or role as a journalist, because it is a whole different world, but there obviously are so many opportunities out there too.
Yeah, it's not a type of reporting that I knew existed before my internship last summer. I stumbled across the internship by chance when I was applying for things last year. And it really taught me a lot more about journalism, and even going back for my final year of college helped me be a better reporter and be more well-rounded and think of things from the consumer perspective, but also the business perspective, especially as I was reporting on like higher education my final year. And then coming back here and being able to dive in head first and be able to communicate effectively with people in the industry was really valuable. And I've heard a lot of people when I was reporting this summer on the internship programs, a lot of people said that a barrier to entry is that students don't know that this field exists. Students don't also know that trade journalism exists. So being exposed to it very early in my career has definitely been a positive. Absolutely. That's a wonderful thing. I've one more question I want to be able to open up to the rest of the team to ask you stuff, but you talked about too, and there was a lot of great feedback that came back from like a bunch of the events that you went and covered, and people are like, oh my gosh, like either they had worked with you last year and they continue to see your growth and maturation. Other people just said how professional you were and how much they enjoyed being able to work with you. I'm curious in terms of like any of the
stories, activations, events that you went and covered stand out to you in terms of like, this was something that this is the reason you come back and do it, or something that really stands out in that sort of way?
I mean, last summer there weren't really many events. I said in my exit interview last year I wanted to do that more. And I mean, this week and last week you have me stacked with events to go to, which has been really fun. And I really enjoyed being able to do that. But also this summer working with Bella on like the different TikToks that we've been doing has been really fun, and getting that like more multimedia aspect of journalism under my belt. Of course, we've been doing the podcast since last year, but getting the social aspect has been really enjoyable. I think that's like one of the newer things from this summer, but also just all the stories I've been writing, I think are so interesting. I feel like you always pitch things, or you always assign things to me that I relate to on a personal level, like the Reddit and Weber Shandwick survey about how women are getting their healthcare information from Reddit, from LLMs. I find myself asking ChatGPT, like, what's this lump? Like, am I okay? Am I going to die? So like finding the personal in my reporting is also something that's been very valuable for me.
We'll have a conversation after this about going on to Reddit for questions about Afrin and nasal sprays. That's a separate thing. I want to open up to the rest of the team for any questions you have about Lola. I've got plenty here, but I know you guys do too.
Yeah, I have a question for Lola. So, you've graduated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you need full-time work.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we're not in a position to give you a full-time job right now. So I know you're looking. How's that going? What's the job market like?
The job market is very scary. I think doing a post-grad internship was probably the best thing I could have done for myself. Of course, in my final semester, I was applying for tons of full-time opportunities and not necessarily hearing back. So being able to come back into a space where I was familiar with and having a manager who really helped me network and connect with people in the industry has opened a lot of doors for me. And I do have some interviews going on right now based on networking connections that I've made. I haven't necessarily landed an interview without that aspect. So for college students who are considering a post-grad internship, I highly recommend it because it continues to give you the exposure that's kind of necessary to get a job in the market right now.
Overall, what's your experience with the job search?
It's scary and stressful. I've submitted maybe 100 to 150 applications since the internship started, 9 weeks ago? So just like rapid fire. Jack and Bella helped me with my resume and my cover letter. I hear a lot of people saying to personalize each resume and cover letter as well, which I've been trying to do with my applications. And I think it's hard because I feel like right now it's a numbers game in this market because there's so many applicants. You just have to put your name in as many hats as you can rather than being able to necessarily sit down and parse through every application and make sure it's the exact job, company that you want to be doing. It's kind of just right now it's getting your foot in the door and having to be flexible as an employee, which is a great skill to have, especially as a young professional, but it can be a little disheartening that you don't get to do exactly what you want to be doing. You have to kind of go through maybe the less favorable things or the things that you're less passionate about before landing what you want to be doing in the long term. But I think that goes back to just career progression in general.
What's your ultimate dream in the future? You're taking aside those things that you might have to do in the meantime to maintain a job, but what's your ultimate dream in journalism? Or has that changed at all over the last year or so? What are your hopes for the future? What are you aiming for?
I think I always approach my journalism with my values in mind over what I'm doing specifically. I've always said that I want to be an unbiased reporter. There's so much mis and disinformation on the internet, and it's such a scary time for people. So I think just being unbiased and presenting information that's accessible, that explains things to people of all different educational backgrounds, etc., is important. And I mean, B2B publishing and medical marketing is one way to do that. You're touching on healthcare, which is impacting everyone in the world. But in college, I did a lot of local journalism, which I loved. I went to college in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I reported on our South Side Bethlehem community, which was really great experience getting to build those connections with real people, going to town halls, reporting on even my school's higher education, layoffs, budget cuts, things like that. And I think no matter what I'm reporting on, I just come at it as trying to present information to people to help them make informed decisions in their lives.
I'm curious, not to bring up AI in this conversation that hasn't yet touched on AI, but I'm curious what you think about the field of journalism right now. And, I know you said that your undergrad was pretty like progressive or like leaned into AI. I'm curious sort of how you've experienced that like in the actual workplace. I think it's safe to say that AI is like a lot more integrated into like the day-to-day work this year than it probably was last year when you were here. So I'm curious sort of what you think of that argument, which I don't think any of us here would make, but people saying that, journalism as we knew it is, or some of the skills of journalism are obsolete. Like, how are you sort of thinking about AI as you venture into your first full time?
I mean, I think AI is both a benefit and a curse. In our field, like you said, last summer, we did not use AI to the extent that we're using it this year, like with Google Gemini and like having the Gemini gems. That I think this summer we really optimize our time through AI, which is really beneficial and helpful. I think last year it was helpful in a sense. I was using ChatGPT more, and Jameson had explained to me to use it as a guide to explain the industry to me so that I could understand it in a quicker way and kind of get my footing under me because I only had 9 weeks here. My senior research project in college was about the evolving landscape of journalism, and I talked about AI in that a lot and hallucinations and misinformation. And there's definitely a lot of fears about consolidation and things like that more generally. But I think that can almost go for any industry right now. People say journalism is dying. I think AI and technology are just evolving what journalism looks like. And I think some jobs will be taken away. I think some jobs will be added. They might not be the most positive jobs, like having to regulate AI is not what I want to be doing as a journalist. But I think that is kind of where it's headed.
Yeah, I think that's really well said.
I want to ask a question. I know that this is, your exit interview, but you bring up an interesting point, and I want to ask Madden a question in the context of all this. I remember when you had left in July of 2024, and we had a conversation about how AI was, this coming tidal wave had already been out there for a couple of years in terms of ChatGPT and stuff, and its impact on media. And I'm just curious what you make of those comments by Lola as somebody that's coming into the field, and you've obviously seen so many evolutions over the course of your career. What does that mean to you?
Well, when I left in 2024, I didn't really look at or use AI for almost a year, beyond every once in a while asking it questions about exercises or something, which was more relevant to what I did that year. When I came back, I was dumbfounded by the advancements in it, how its accuracy had increased, how much deeper it seemed to be thinking, how much more broadly it spread its tentacles. And I thought, wow, maybe I just made a really bad decision to be a writer again, because this does it so well. But the more I used it, the more I realized it actually doesn't do it all that well. And I think that for a journalist, it's a powerful tool. It can definitely be a force multiplier. If a journalist is measured by both output, let's say the equation for the measurement of a journalist's performance is quality times volume of output. Your volume of output can be drastically increased by using AI, because all of a sudden, instead of having to spend a morning researching a topic before you interview someone about it, you can ask AI, who should I be talking to and what should I be asking them specifically? Because, Haymarket uses a kind of a black box where it knows MM+M very well. So I think that that's really good. And I think that it's not a dying profession. It's a morphing and shrinking profession, but there's always a demand for quality journalism. I think Lola is really smart in looking at trade publications. Trade publications have weathered the storm in a way that the consumer publications have not, because people always need information, right? And they always need advice on how to do their jobs better. And the hierarchy of professions has definitely changed since I got out of college many administrations ago. When there was a hierarchy, like you wanted to work at a consumer publication, anything in the Time Inc. Or Condé Nast stable, and we all kind of turned up our noses at trade stuff or B2B stuff. And now I have people who I had worked with at some of those publications calling me and asking me for advice. How do I get into this? Because the industry has morphed as well. Like, we have multiple revenue streams that consumer publications don't. We have awards, we have, conferences, we have other types of events. There are certificate programs at other B2B publications. So I think this is a smart way to go. I know I'm getting kind of far afield from the original question, which was about AI. But I think you can use AI to guide your job search in a way that is really helpful.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. And I really appreciate those insights, and obviously having the years to be able to provide that context is super helpful. Lola, I asked you this question last year, and ultimately you were talking to yourself. It was like, what should the next Lola know about becoming an intern here? And to your point, we have the same general structure for you as we did for Molly, the intern before, and everything. Like it's 8 weeks. There's only so much we can do, but there has been change in terms of expectations, responsibilities. What would you say to whoever our intern is going to be in 2027 in terms of what they can expect from joining MM+M and covering this industry and getting a little taste of the job?
I think it's tricky coming into it, and you kind of just have to dive right in and be willing to take on every assignment and every project. I mean, Jack, you throw anything and everything at me and I want to do it and I want to learn the best I can. So taking advantage of that, taking advantage of the networking events, and just even in the office, like talking to different people in the business media group and beyond that is really helpful. But also networking with the other interns is very important. I am still friends with 3 or 4 of the interns from last summer. And like this summer, 2 of us came back or me and him came back, and like Dylan and I are still good friends. We get lunch together and we network that way. And we get to like bounce ideas off of each other. We get to talk about early career advice from a peer, which is a little bit different than someone who's more established in the field. So I think that is like the most underrated thing you can do. I think everything else maybe is a little more obvious, like do everything, like ask questions, like network with everyone in the company. But intern networking is also something that gets overlooked, I think.
No, that's so key. And I don't know about the 3 of you, but like I can tell you that was something that I just didn't. Maybe that was a more competitive spirit or something where it's like, I don't want to, you're just in your own lane. And I look back on that, I'm like, oh yeah, like I probably could have benefited from talking to the other interns that were in my cohorts at the various places that I stopped along the way at the start of my career. But I think that's a very fair point. Before we hop into the trend segment and talk about the vaccine policy proposal changes and everything like that, is there anything else from the rest of the team you want to ask Lola, or even just a comment on her time, both from this year and last year too? I know that extends to Lesha as well.
I just want to say thank you, Lola, for your time again. And, it's always refreshing and cool to hear your thoughts on the future of journalism. And I think that you have a bright future ahead of you. So it's great to have you around again this year.
I'll second that. I just want to wish you the best of luck in the job search. I know whenever you land someplace, you're going to do a great job.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I think, yeah, same. I agree. And just nice to have fresh perspectives and, yeah, be able to highlight our generational divides, you, me, and Jack, and especially as it relates to gifts and who uses gifts and whether gifts are like socially acceptable, which,
they are socially acceptable. I'll be the cringy millennial here and say they are.
I would argue that they are not. But anyway, Lola, it's been great having you. And to Madden's point, I think wherever you go, you'll be super successful.
And if any employers are listening,
exactly,
I'm available.
We have Lola's LinkedIn profile in the show notes, so you can go check that out there. I will, just on Bella's point there too, I'll sound like a broken record, and obviously wishing you the best in terms of whatever comes next in your career and where you land. But you last year were the one that put me on to Somber.
Yes.
And so I'll ask you, this will be the last question of this segment before we switch over. It's for anybody that's listening here that's like, oh, I wonder what a 22-year-old is listening to. What should they be putting on their Spotify playlist?
I'm listening to Noah Kahn a lot this summer, but also Camp, CAAMP, is a little indie band. They're also they're very folky kind of music, so that's what I've been enjoying more. I'm still listening to some, but I'm trying to see him on tour for a third time, so fingers crossed, because I missed out on Noah Kahn. I was night one of New York, if anyone gets that reference.
And some of us have seen him twice. But anyways, we'll end the segment there. Thank you so much, Lola. And now we're going to go talk about everyone's favorite topic, which is vaccine policy changes.
Campaign chemistry.
The very best of outdoor advertising is when you see it, you go,
A weekly podcast from Campaign US featuring conversations with creatives and marketers leading the industry.
Mike Peck is the Vice President of Creative at Brooks Running.
Xanthi Wells, VP of Global Creative at Pinterest.
Hi, Megan Lally here from High Dive.
Today, I was able to grab Aaron Starkman, Global CCO of Rethink.
Listen, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And for the latest news in our industry, visit campaignlive.com.
I think the first person I'm going to throw it over to is Madden, because you wrote the piece even before we got the announcement from the Trump administration about the proposal to break up the shots and lower the amount of shots that children would get. You had written about RFK's appearance on CNN last week, obviously talked about it during the podcast while I was out. But now we have this new announcement that came to start the week. What is your just gut reaction to what came out of the White House on Monday?
In an earlier discussion we had when we were talking about what we were going to cover this week, I mentioned the fact that reporting this as straight news kind of defies logic at this point, because what more can you possibly say about the stupidity of all this? You know, it's like we try to do it like we all learned how to be a reporter. It's like you say, this is what happened. This is what this side says. This is what that side says. And we do a disservice by reporting it straight, because it is 100% wrong. And we need to call it like it is and say that there's no science behind this. Every measure that they included adds the ability for things to fail immeasurably. You know, part of the reason there is a 3 disease vaccine, MMR, is because we get it all over with in one shot, right? I think about my own experiences taking my children to the pediatrician for anything, and how fraught that experience was, especially when vaccines were included, because kids are scared of needles. Who isn't? And so now that means that if they put any teeth into this, and that's the thing. It's like, it's a little unclear whether this has the force of law behind it, or the force of policy enforcement. Now you're making 3 separate trips, 3 miserable experiences, 3 co-pays, right? 3 visits. It's like there's so much behind this that's wrong. So the science is completely wrong. The public health policy is completely wrong. The logistics and the finance are completely wrong. I would bet that somehow Trump shorted healthcare stocks, puts this in place, knows that people are going to have to go to the doctor more often. United Health's stock price is going to rise. I just don't know what like I said, I think like talking about this as if this is coming from rational people is irrational.
Yeah, I think this is a great jumping off point. And the first note when I was kind of gathering my thoughts this morning before we recorded this was, this is the logical endpoint of the most illogical approach to vaccine policy. And obviously I know that there has been all of this criticism about, the vaccine schedule and stuff, and it goes back years. And some of it you can make the argument is maybe legitimate concerns. And most of it has been made in such bad faith and with such malicious intent, whether it's presented that way or not, that there's no other way that you can take it. So I'm fully aligned with you there, Madden. And you bring up the interesting point that Bella, when the announcement came through yesterday, had first made that argument where it's like, okay, so now you're going to make one trip for a 3-in-1 shot, 3 trips. And I even think about when I got the COVID vaccine, the first one I got was the J&J one, because it was supposed to be the one shot, you're in and out. And I had seen too many cases of people get the first Moderna or Pfizer vaccine, get COVID in the intervening period. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't help there. So it's like we already have a recent history example of that, but now we're going to do that for MMR while we're already in the middle of a measles outbreak the country hasn't seen in the past 35, 40 years. Like, it's just so, I think you used the word confounding, Madden. Like, it's just so frustrating. I know we come on here and we've done this about so many different things over the course of the 4.5 years that I've been here, but it's like, this is just truly one of the, all right, we finally caught the dog has finally caught the mail truck. It's like, well, what do you do now? Like, where do you go from here?
Well, where you go is to the clinic, and you take your kid in and say, I don't know what's wrong with him. And the doctor says, oh, he has measles. He has rubella.
Yeah.
Now what do you do?
On top of that, it's already so hard to get a doctor's appointment in the first place. Like, I mean, I tried to make an appointment in April, and I'm not going until August 27th. Like, it's, if there's something like wrong with you, like, I think it, like you said, it confounds with so many other issues in the country. There's so many health outbreaks right now, measles included. There's difficulty getting appointments, and then people who are experiencing loss of health insurance. And I think all of those are going to confound, and I think it's probably a bad time to make changes like this.
Yeah, I think the timing is terrible, just because, again, like, we on the East Coast, schools won't start up for the next like 3 weeks, if not a month. But on the West Coast and in the middle of the country, you're starting to see kids going back to school, and parents are, okay, like, what vaccines do they have to get and everything. And like, this announcement coming at this particular time could have not have gone over worse. Belle, I'm curious your thought. I mean, you're from Ohio too, so it's like, this is the time of year where it's like revving up to go back to school.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your parents had those conversations with you where it's like, you're gonna have to get X, Y, or Z shot. Now, what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, I don't know. And I was reading some Reddit forums before we started recording, and there was like a pregnancy forum, and people were like not expressing vaccine hesitism or like skepticism, but they were like, am I going to be able to like get my new baby vaccinated? Like, what are the ramifications of this? And of course, like, there won't be, hopefully ever, if not for a very long time, if the CDC changes its actual vaccine schedule. But I just think, like, when I first heard about this and like in thinking about it since, I'm like, we were just talking about how the US is sort of sounding the alarms about lagging behind China and biotech, and like, how do we keep pace? How do we, like, how do we become like a center for excellence and development and all of those things? And is it by like rethinking the science of an MMR vaccine that's like worked so well for so long and like breaking them into 3 parts for no reason? Like, how does that help us advance in the industry? It doesn't. It just feels like throwing down like road spikes in the biotech industry. And like, because obviously there are not individual vaccines approved in the US. They exist elsewhere, but they would need to go through a whole process here. And so like, are we going to put resources towards that? And how does that affect how the biotech industry sees the US generally? That seems just to me like a hazard beyond the whole like, issue with not having herd immunity and stuff like that, and how dangerous that is.
And that's something that Lola and I pointed out. We were going through the earnings reports for all the pharma companies for the past 3 weeks. And that was something that wasn't in the Q1 earning reports, as people talking about like the investments and challenges coming out of China is something that we would be, it's so short-sighted thinking in terms, and it's not only that in terms of the competition with China, the biotech space there is obviously heating up. Investments are going in there. You don't want to let the Chinese Communist Party ultimately be the one that is running the pharma and biotech space. That's just something that I think everybody in this industry probably can agree with. The other thing too is like and I said this months ago when we were talking about some decision that RFK had made, where it's like the downstream effects of this are going to be so deadly and so long-term when you have children that haven't even been born that are now going to be subjected to a life of deformity or malcondition or something, or death as a result of this. Like, that's just the inevitable part of this. And I could keep ranting, but I want to bring Lesha in the conversation too, because Lesha, you've been covering this for years alongside me. You had covered when they had done away with the funding for the Wild to Mild campaign too. Like, all of this from a messaging perspective too is just all across the board. You make the point about what they said in the Reddit forum about like the confusion that consumers just have to have about this is off the charts.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, legally speaking, it's going to be hard to actually enforce an executive order in general. But the fear mongering and the confusing public health messaging, like you said, is going to have a huge impact and these downstream effects. So I think even if the Trump administration can't enforce something like this on a federal level, it doesn't really matter because like the damage is sort of done already. Earlier in the year, there was another HHS effort, I believe we talked about this on the podcast as well, to reduce the number of recommended vaccines in the childhood schedule. And that did face some lawsuits in court, and a federal judge blocked it. So basically, a federal judge sided with the public health groups that had sued the administration over this. So legally, we'd expect more challenges to happen to this new executive order, and it's unlikely to actually be enforced. But, you know, over the last few years of the Trump administration and Kennedy being in charge, like the public health messaging has received so much damage. And I think it's just going to make vaccine hesitancy in the country so much worse over the next few years. Even if we do have a new administration in a couple of years, I think like the damage has been done. And marketers are going to need to have a long-term plan, not just during the Trump administration, but post-Trump administration, on how to, I guess, bring that vaccine hesitancy down and kind of reverse course.
No, it's one of those things too that like this is a long time coming to in terms of building to this. Like you don't sow this amount of distrust just within a couple of years. I actually went back to, I think it was the second presidential Republican primary debate in 2015 when Trump was on stage, and he had said that, you know, he had told this anecdote about a 2.5-year-old child who got a vaccine, came back with a fever, and then they were autistic, and just make this blanket nothing, you know, claim out there. And I remember at the time being I was a junior in college, being an aspirational political reporter, writing a blog, and the title of it was "Don't Be Stupid." And it was all about just calling out these Republican presidential candidates, Ben Carson, a neurosurgeon, chief among them, and saying like, don't be dumb. Don't be embracing this because you're trying to pander to the lowest common denominator of voters or non-voters that you're going to bring into the tent. And obviously that's the way that they've done it. This is something that goes back to that, you know, debunked study back in 1998. You fast forward into the 2016 election, it's playing on those fears. He has the meeting with RFK Jr. where he was going to tap him to lead a vaccine safety commission just before he was inaugurated in 2017. Then you bring him into the fold in 2024 to win the election. You make him HHS secretary. Like there is a steady drumbeat here. And I think your point's so well taken, Lesha, where it's like, okay, so say in 2028, we get President Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer, whoever, pick your Democrat of choice. And it's like, well, not overnight are suddenly the people that I see in the dive bar going to be like, oh yeah, like, wait, can't I not get that vaccine? Can't my kid not get that? Like, this is not just something that's just and we saw that when Biden was president. It doesn't just change overnight. These are movements. These are narratives that take years, if not decades, to combat. And unfortunately, one of the selling points on it is going to be infant and pediatric death. That's just the inevitability of this.
Well, but you make a really good point. And like, you know, at the end of the day yesterday, you could say, well, we checked that box. We played to the cheap seats in advance of the midterms. So we took care of that. We did that for them. Now we should probably talk about whether we're going to ban Roundup or not, because that seems to be a big deal too.
Yeah, and not like that Supreme Court ruling is going to stand in the way of that at all, which happened back in June. I just wanted, for the reference too, that Matt was talking about, if you were shorting the stock, major drug makers who are in the vaccine space, Merck, KGaA, Bristol Myers Squibb, Pfizer, GSK, and Johnson & Johnson, all down over 1% today. Some of them down more than 3%. So just to show, again, even if there's no value or teeth in terms of that policy action, people see a press conference in the Oval Office with a actively sleeping president making this announcement, and the market moves off of that, and people have their own interpretations of what that all means. It's just so the thing at the end of the day, and I don't know how I really feel for our audience in that way, where it's like, how do you combat that? How do you, when you haven't had any sort of active relationship with your target audience, which are consumers, how do you then fight back against something that is so made for TV, so edible on social media? That's the ultimate challenge here. That's what it's all going to come down to for these health brands.
Well said.
Anybody else want to rant? I can feel my blood pressure rising. I guess the one thing that I'll cap this off with is just like, and I said it at the top, there are concerns about vaccines. And to Matt's point, I remember being a kid and I didn't want to get X, Y, or Z vaccine. But you know what? I didn't have a choice. I had parents that were looking out for my safety, and they had family members that used to worry about polio and measles and chicken pox and all these things. I remember my grandmother, before she passed away, had gotten shingles because she had chicken pox when she was a child because they didn't have the vaccine for chicken pox. Like, we continue to advance. We have longer lived lives. And are there ways that maybe they lived decades or centuries ago that were healthier, that they weren't eating ultra processed foods or all this garbage that's out there? Sure. But they also didn't have vaccines. You died of smallpox. You died of polio. You died of these things. And we have the medical infrastructure and technology, and to Lola's point, access to these tools, and you'd be remiss not to take them. And the idea that we are voluntarily punting on that on third down instead of fourth down, like, this is just lunacy. And to Matt's point, we don't have to, we can call it straight on a bunch of other things. If somebody wants to talk to me about omni-channel strategy and whether it's yay or nay, I'll go toe to toe with you on that. We can keep that straight. We'll work with the facts. But if you're not entitled to your own opinions, you're not entitled to your own facts. I've been told that since I was 14 years old. And this is one of those instances where my opinions are backed by facts. And if people want to argue with that, with their own interpretations, they want to get in the comment section, whatever. That's your funeral.
If you don't want to take a vaccine, then don't. But, don't deny the facts that this stuff actually works and it doesn't cause autism.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's also the point that, I think, herd immunity, if you're choosing not to get a vaccination, you are exposing the rest of the population in some way, shape, or form, especially, as a young child, not getting your children vaccinated. I remember running into kindergarten with my vaccination checklist for my teacher, and it just makes for a safer environment for everyone. And it's I don't know, to me, it's for the greater good. You talked about the COVID vaccine. I got my COVID vaccine, my second or third, or my booster or whatever, and I got COVID the next day. And I was okay, I have COVID, but if I didn't get the vaccine, maybe I'd get COVID again in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
You never fully know, but also science is showing that you can trust these things. So I don't understand the argument for not vaccinating, but I always think of it as for the greater good as well. People who don't, I think, might be considered selfish.
Yeah. And I know that we live in this time where empathy is woke and it's all this nonsense around caring for other people and having an altruistic worldview. But I don't, that's my own personal values. Maybe it's being from upstate New York of all places, but you care about other people. You care about the communities that you're in. You care about not hurting other people there just shouldn't be this degradation in terms of your responsibility to being a person in a society. I know that we all live in our little virtual silos out there in the digital age, but at the end of the day, we all ride the train together. We all go to the supermarket. We all go to school, all these places. And it's if you're going in there and you're actively infectious, or you could put other people at risk by your own negligence, again, I don't know what to tell you if that doesn't move the needle for you, or, thousands upon millions of dead children as a result of our inaction.
And that's also very bad for the economy.
Yeah. And if you just want to make the base, free market case, it's true though.
I'm trying, I have a lot of family members who are unvaccinated. I couldn't see my grandma for 2 years because she didn't get the COVID vaccine. And I didn't want to kill her. It's there are things, there are slownesses that are introduced to the system, inefficiencies, people can't go to work. People are, running up expensive bills in hospitals that they didn't have to contract something. And now it's costing the system a lot of money, not to be sort of blunt about it. And obviously these are macroeconomic things that people are aware of. And this is not new of this time, but it's expensive and it's stupid and it's unnecessary.
Mm-hmm. But does it score cheap political points, as man brought out? What's the value? How many executive orders have we dealt with in just a year and a half of this presidency? Again, it just muddies the waters where it shouldn't be muddied. I care much more about the fact that I had to pay over $4 a gallon of gas when I was out there in Colorado on my trip, or the fact that I just went to the grocery store and it cost me $150 and it usually costs me $120. If we want to talk about kitchen table issues, leave this aside in the doctor's office where it belongs.
Amen.
That's how I'm going to end this.
Yeah.
That's the MM+M podcast, brought to you by Anger, Righteous Fury, and Anger. I am Jack O'Brien, the executive editor. It's been wonderful to have this conversation. Lola, thank you again for being such a wonderful summer intern, editorial fellow, whatever title we're going with here. You've been a wonderful asset to the team both last year and this year. I can't thank you enough on behalf of both me and the brand. So wish you the best in your future endeavors. And we look forward to you, the listener, joining us next week when hopefully we won't have to be so filled with indignation, but who knows? Maybe there's something else that will stir that up. So we'll see you next week. Take care in the meantime.
The MM+M podcast is produced by Jack O'Brien, Lesha Bushak, Steve Madden, Jamison Fleming, Bella Chakowski, Bill Fitzpatrick, and Gordon Failer, with additional production by Lola Offenback and Julia Ramada. Listen, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts.
Campaign chemistry.
The very best of outdoor advertising is when you see it, you go,
A weekly podcast from Campaign US, featuring conversations with creatives and marketers leading the industry.
Mike Peck is the Vice President of Creative at Brooks Running.
Santhi Wells, VP of Global Creative at Pinterest.
Hi, Megan Lally here from High Dive.
Today, I was able to grab Aaron Starkman, Global CCO of Rethink.
Listen, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And for the latest news in our industry, visit campaignlive.com.